everyone, it's Joy here for Tailored Expressions. I am so very excited to be sharing the very beautiful Graceful Ferns kit with you today. Now let me show you what's in the kit. You get the Graceful Ferns stamp set, and then there's some coordinating dies that go with that. The Inside Scoop Sympathy Sentiment stamp set, the Leafy Frond die, and then of course you get the little envelope stickers, envelopes, and then you have this larger sticker that's going to go on top of your little zipper pouch here that holds all of your card kit components. So then I'm going to be using 4 colors of liquid watercolor: Lime Zest, Peapod, Cookie Monster, and Peaches and Cream. So we're going to be doing some watercoloring with this kit. So I'm also using Sugar Cube Cardstock, Watercolor Cardstock, Peapod, Cookie Monster, and Peaches and Cream Cardstock, Oreo and VersaMark ink, gold drip drops. Then I'm using the awesome new powder tool because I'll be doing some gold embossing. So here's that gold embossing powder, some glue, 3D foam squares, and a paintbrush along with Misty, and I'm using some grid paper. Okay, so I am making mini slimline cards, and all of my backgrounds will be trimmed to 6 by 3 inches. I did squirt out a little bit of the Peaches and Cream and Cookie Monster liquid watercolors on my work surface there. I did spritz my watercolor paper with a little bit of water, and I'm just dipping my brush in to the liquid watercolor and letting the water on the paper move the color around. So I am not someone that really knows how to do watercolors, but I really liked how this turned out because, as you can see, it just kind of keeps reaching out. If the watercolor is a little too concentrated, I just use my water sprayer and just kind of spritz it again. Okay, for my next one, the same watercolor cardstock, and I am going to tape this one down because I want to be able to kind of control where the watercolor is going. So this one is Cookie Monster and Lime Zest. And I am going to spray my paper, just drop the watercolor itself onto this, spray it some more, and then just kind of lift up my work surface there and kind of move that liquid watercolor around. And I really like how this background turned out. And I did take my heat tool to all of these backgrounds just to kind of dry them really quick. And I just dabbed up any excess water or watercolor with a dry paper towel. Okay, so for the third background, I'm going to be using the opened fern stamp. So it's not a solid leaf, it's open, and we're going to be doing some actual painting with the watercolors. So I'm going to stamp that with the Oreo ink onto my watercolor paper. Now the watercolor cardstock has a rough side and a smooth side. The other two backgrounds were on the rough side. This is stamped on the smooth side. So I did squeeze out a little bit of the Lime Zest on my work surface. I am using a tiny bit of water on my brush and dipping it into the Lime Zest just to really kind of thin out the color. You do not have to do it this way. When I add the next color, I'm just going to do it full strength. I'm not going to dip my brush in the water. So here is the Peapod, and I'm going to add a little bit of darker areas to each one of the leaves, and I'm just dipping my brush straight into it without diluting any of it with the water, and it goes on beautifully. So I'm just going to add some darker areas, a little bit of shadow on these leaves. And then I'm going to put this aside to dry because we're going to do something else with the background, but I wanted this part to dry first. So I'm going to finish coloring that. And then I'm going to stamp the solid fern leaf from the Graceful Ferns stamp set with some VersaMark ink. I did prep my background with the anti-static powder tool. This is on Sugar Cube cardstock, so not the watercolor cardstock. And I'm going to stamp that a couple times to get a really good image. And I'm going to sprinkle on gold embossing powder. Then I will use my heat tool to heat that until it's nice and melted. I'm actually going to do this twice because I want 2 of these gold embossed fern stamped images for one of the cards. So I'm going to heat that until it's nice and melted, and you know it will be melted because it will be shiny. I will use the coordinating die, for both of these solid fern images. And I'm just going to tape that down and run it through my die cut machine. Okay, so that other one, the other background is dry now, and I'm just using some Peaches and Cream and Cookie Monster liquid watercolors, and I'm just going to splatter onto the background. I just felt like this background needed a little extra something, and that splatter effect is so pretty. And I'm just barely dipping my paintbrush in just to get little tiny dots, and it looks fantastic. Okay, so for the sentiment, this sentiment says, praying for strength for today and hope for tomorrow. I am going to stamp this first on my grid paper in my MISTI because I want to make sure it's straight. And then I will bring my card panel back in. Now this card panel has a Peapod mat around it, and that measures 3 1/4 by 6 1/4. All of these backgrounds will have a colored mat to it. So then I sprinkled on my embossing powder. I did use the VersaMark ink. I prepped my cardstock beforehand, so it's really important that your background is completely dry, otherwise your embossing powder will stick. Now I apologize guys, I did not have it recorded when I made this card, but this is mounted on a piece of Peaches and Cream cardstock. Then I used the Leafy Frond die from Sugar Cube Cardstock. Die cut that twice, popped that up with the foam squares to give it some dimension, and then stamped with a sentiment that says, may you find comfort in loving memories, strength in the support of those who care, and hope in each new day. So for the next sentiment, I am stamping with sympathy. This has a coordinating die with it, so I just stamped that in Oreo ink. I'm going to die cut this out, and then we can get the rest of these cards put together. All of the card bases are Sugar Cube Cardstock. They measure 6 1/2 by 3 1/2. This has a Cookie Monster mat on the back. And again, that measures 3 1/4 by 6 1/4. I'm going to add those 3D foam squares behind this image here. The other one is just adhered directly to the card panel, and then some foam adhesive behind that sentiment. Then I'm going to come in for all of the cards and finish them off with some gold drip drops. And as you can see, all of these are on the white mini slim card bases. They have their beautiful little colored, matching colored mat behind them. And then we're just going to finish off with this little bit of gold, and these cards are just beautiful. So this Graceful Ferns kit is absolutely stunning. You can make some great sympathy cards, and then adding in the watercolor with it is super simple, but as you can see here, made some really beautiful cards. I want to thank you guys so very much for stopping by and watching, and I hope that you enjoyed this project. You can find all of these products at the Tailored Expressions web store at tailoredexpressions.com.